Hey, it's MK, and I am here with a mixed media mayhem layout for you guys today. And today I am also joining Christy's Beautiful Life 30 Days of Sketches, and the sketch is by Aprilynne Bishop Barrett. Just wanted to make sure that I got all of her name correct, because I do tend to fumble over names I'm not familiar with. So I decided to pull out these very shiny gold stickers, actually thickers. I love them, but they are very bright and vibrant. So I pulled out some Deco Art acrylic Americana paint for my recipe for Mixed Media Mayhem is paint, acetate, and splatter. So I pulled out the paint along with a stencil by Katie Petite. I have these acetate pieces from 49 and Market Vintage Orchard or something like that. And then also from Katie Petite. They're actually both by Katie Petite. One's just 49 and Market, and the other one is Arden. And you'll see soon that I compare two pieces together that look very similar. I also have these two pictures that I took of the fog or the mist on my way either from Washington or to Washington. I just am very fascinated by nature, you guys. It just is always fascinating to me. So I'm just sharing with you guys the scraps that I have left over from a previous project back in September. I brought them out briefly while I was making that project and saved them for October. And then I fussy cut out all of these flowers that clearly I'm not Vanna White, but I fussy cut out these flowers from the In Full Bloom scraps of paper that I had by Close to My Heart. And then I had this leftover little piece from the Grateful Heart collection by Pretty Little Studio that I thought would be perfect for those little squares that Aprilynne has on her sketch. So the first thing I'm going to do is, as you can see, I'm not going to be doing any of my trace outlining. I am roguing it, which you'll see later why this doesn't work for me, but I am taking my paint and putting it on the stencil or putting it on my applicator, which is a brand new applicator. Because normally when you use paint on an applicator, if you don't wash it right away or rinse out all that paint, you just have to throw it away. So I've got a brand new applicator, and then I'm just applying a little bit of paint, and then I'm dabbing it ever so slightly and making sure that I'm triple dabbing it. So that way my sponge isn't sopping wet with paint. I just want to make sure that it is saturated enough to go through the stencil. And I love this technique because it's almost like a texture paste, but it's not fully blown on texture that it I don't know, you can feel it, but you can't like see the raised effect of it, if that makes any sense. And then of course I watered it down just a little bit so I could get my splatters out of it as well, because I had a hard time matching splatters to this beautiful color of yellow. So I decided to actually do some math. Not really, it's process of elimination. I checked to see how big my paper was and then went, I think, 1/8 of an inch larger. So I had a little bit more. I think I had a 10-inch piece instead of a 9-inch piece, and I didn't want that scrap left over. So I just decided to make my squares not so squarey, which is a rectangle in a way. And so I just made them just a little bit longer than they are wider, if that makes any sense. So here I'm going to load up my brush again, or my sponge, and take this vibrant gold and tone it down by using my paint. Now this did have to dry overnight. I don't know if it was necessary, but I didn't want to accidentally smear it off or scratch it off or anything, because I didn't. Usually when you put something on a glossy surface, you have to rough up that edge so the paint or ink or anything has something to adhere to. I didn't do that. So I went ahead and I set this off to the side and I let it dry overnight just to make sure that it is going to stay on my beautiful word. Then I'm going to go ahead, while that is drying and my base page is drying, I'm going to go ahead and scuff up the edges of all of my little squares. As you guys know me, it's an outdoor layout, so everything has to look rugged. So I'm going to do the same thing for all of these beautiful wood pieces wood paper that I could not honestly throw away. They're wood grain for one, and for two, they are really awesomely torn. Like I could not have planned this any better. And when the layout's all done, I really like the effect that these pieces give, even though they're from two different collections. The one that I'm working on now is actually from Minte. I want to say it's either from Day by Day or the Antique Shop. I don't really remember based off of that microscopic little bits that I can see. And well, maybe when I turn it over, I can tell you for sure if it's the Antique Shop or Day by Day because of the backside of it. I also am going to be using my little robot vacuum that I have. And to be honest, I don't use it often enough because it came with little tools. And because of these large pieces that I'm putting in the robot, I don't know the capacity that it can hold. So I do end up leaving this in just so you guys can kind of see the inner workings of the little vacuum, which I thought was pretty cool because I didn't know any better. So here I'm vacuuming it all up, and then I have these little tools. I thought this was the tool to help me remove the bottom piece, and instead it's a little tool to kind of get inside tiny crevices. I didn't know that. And then I wanted to figure out how to take out the part to clean it off. And basically all it does is it's got these little notches that it twists into. And so you twist it to put it on and you untwist it to take it out. But clearly you untwist it more gracefully than I did because I untwisted it not knowing what I was doing and dumped my entire contents of the vacuum out on my table. So I had a little cleanup to do. But that was the inner workings of the vacuum and what the little tool is for that I wasn't aware of because I thought it was a taker-offer tool. Okay, so here's where I needed to add more of this yellow because when I added my larger wood grain piece, which that was a Simple Stories wood grain because it's got a graph or a lined paper on the other side. Simple Stories came out with a Simple Stories Essential Wood Grain pack. And it came with 2 sheets of each pack. And I'm slowly but surely working my way through those 2 sheets because they were definitely my favorite wood grain. And I say that for every pack that I open. It's my favorite until it's gone and then I have another one, right? That's how that always works. But because it was so big and I didn't know how far down I needed to go with all of my mixed media, I needed to add some more of the little mixed media. The best part about this stencil or any stencil really is that you just add a little bit and it goes a very long way. So I was very grateful for that. I especially love the grungy stencils because you don't need to apply the whole thing to get the effect of how gorgeous it is. Just a teeny tiny little bit of stencil and bam, you have an amazing background for all of these. I don't even know if they're eclectic pieces, but all of these random pieces that were scraps, and now I'm throwing them all together to make a layout. I love the little squares. So I didn't have 3 photos like Aprilynne had in her sketch. So I'm taking the top 2 squares and putting them behind my one large photo instead of having just the 2 smaller or the 3 smaller pictures. So that's what I am doing here. So I've got my little squares, but I did add in my wood grain instead of, just having the squares. I felt like my pictures needed some sort of shelf to sit on. And so I'm putting the squares and incorporating my pictures and squares with these ripped little pieces. And it actually makes it look like I ripped my background and put the wood grain behind it instead of vice versa. But I like the illusion. I really do. I also like the idea or my mishap of making rectangles instead of squares because my pictures were rectangles. So that kind of made it a little bit more like, I meant to do that type of thing, even though I didn't. So I'm going through this acetate sheet. It is again from the Vintage Orchard set by 49 and Market. I haven't even opened it yet, you guys. I'm so lame. Sometimes I get product and I save it for a specific thing, and then that thing is done and I didn't use everything that I planned because maybe or maybe not they get left behind and in my organizer and I forget about them. Yeah, that could be a thing. And it might be real. And that's what happened with these guys. But that little piece that I pulled out that has almost like a sampler effect where it's got the alphabet and everything on it. Well, I found the exact same background in this Arden Create set, which is right there. It's another little sampler. However, one of them had more elements, almost like the sampler was a background or a base for more elements to be put on it. So I thought that was pretty cool that, I could see Katie Pertitte's designs. Not that she designed all of it, but I can see it in both of them. And it reminds me that, yeah, she worked for this company. Now she's over at this company. And it just makes me happy. All right. So I added my acetate pieces. I kind of cheated, but I added my acetate pieces. I just used a bunch of backgrounds, basically. I will add more. I did pick out more acetate pieces just in case. But in all honesty, I didn't use them. So, yeah, I don't know. I pull things out and then I just decide that I don't think that they're going to work, but that's how it works. I also pulled out these little stickery tapey things. I think they're called PET tape. I'm not really sure. They were gifted to us. I say us because Janet and myself each received some from Tara, who is Paper Snob here on YouTube, because we weren't sure what they were. And Janet and I weren't sure about purchasing one, and then we have this whole roll of something that we might not like. And so Tara sent us little samplers, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is cool. Plus it was perfect. Plus she didn't end up with a big old whole roll. So she shared it with us, a few pieces with us, which I thought was absolutely perfect in a way. And it's like, well, let's do that again. So we're going to set up an exchange program on questionable scrapbook products. All right. I'm taking my fussy cut out flowers and just applying them around the squares, just like Aprilynne had on her sketch. And I have this one left over. It looks like a wedge, and I'm not really sure, but the yellow flower sticks out too much. I couldn't get it to work. So I'm just not going to use that one. I don't know if I save it. I don't know because it is the last little bit that I have of this collection. So I'm not really sure. But that is where I decided not to use the acetate pieces. And then I have a couple little pieces of tucky things, like tickets and labels and stuff like that I'm going to use to finish off. But I wanted to make sure that my title actually had a place to live. And Aprilynne stuck her title in between all three of her little squares. So because I didn't have the 3 squares, I decided to stick it in between the 2 squares. Well, I do have 3 squares. I promise. I have my 3 squares. I don't have 3 photos. That's where it is. So I stuck my beautiful right where it belongs, in between all the photos. I did add a little bit of something extra down at the bottom of my page for that third little element, because I felt like by the time that I added everything in, I've got one giant element going on in the center of my page, and then that little hangy offy bit. I had all this extra little pieces that I couldn't part with. I can't throw those things away, you guys. I just struggle with that. All right, so there is my layout for today. I had so much fun. I love playing with my scraps and seeing what I can create with my scraps. Sometimes a sketch helps a lot, and sometimes just throwing the scraps on top of each other are inspiration enough for me. It's my favorite thing to do, is to just have a bunch of scraps and then see what I can do with them. And I was able to make 2 layouts for this. Aprilynne, thank you so much for such an amazing sketch. I really did have fun with your little elements and squares and whatnot. Don't forget to check out all the links that I have down below for Mixed Media Mayhem, as well as Christy's Beautiful Life 30 Days of Sketches. I have playlist links, Facebook group links, album links, just in case you don't want to see the whole feed. And sometimes I get confused by scrolling through the feed, because especially in the Christy's Beautiful Life sketch Facebook group, because people are playing with her sketches all the time, no matter what series, all the way back from series 1 all the way to series 19. So I do like to go straight to the albums and see what's in the albums as opposed to scrolling the feed because it gets a little confusing. All right, you guys, again, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really, truly appreciate it, and I will check you guys all later. Bye.